This is Bread Over Stones, Episode 6. Check yourself before you wreck your family.
Welcome to the Bread Over Stones podcast, the show that gives grace-driven solutions to heal, unite, and inspire families. Your host is Matthew Morgan, a licensed professional clinical counselor in Ohio, a pastor, and my husband of over 20 years.
And my dad. He loves bringing families together and helping them relate better with one another.
At Bread Over Stones, you'll add to your toolbox as a parent and a spouse in order to improve the way you communicate, discipline, and ultimately show your love for your family.
So welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Bread Over Stones podcast. Thank you for letting me into your lives today. This is episode 6, and I will be honest, I'm recording this out of a little bit of faith. I was hoping to have everything structured and organized and in place right now. I recorded my first 5 episodes, planned a great launch, or at least a launch of some sort, something more epic than Apollo 1. But a certain provider for podcast distribution, who will remain nameless at this point, was suffering some pretty severe issues. And the podcast community seems to all have the same problems. So there was no launch because of this issue with a lowercase I. So that's all right. Again, I'm kind of recording this out of faith. I know that they probably have some good resources to get this figured out. So I'm going to let the engineers do what they do, and I'm just going to try to keep putting some content out there. So hopefully they get their I issues together and get rid of the I problems, and they can launch an I podcast and get all that done. So, but we won't say who is having problems. So anyway, it has been quite a week. That has actually been the least of my issues. It's been a mild frustration, but it's been a tough week financially. It's been a tough week health-wise, and I will be honest, I didn't feel a whole lot like recording, and so normally I try to get things done later on in the week and get ready for a Monday launch. It is now currently Sunday evening, and we are waiting for me to finish so we can get dinner going. But I wanted to make sure I at least got this out, and it seems very fitting. And hopefully you don't mind this. I'm not going to go into all my issues. You are not my therapist. I do have a supervisor who I get to process all of this stuff with. But my approach to therapy has always been to be very open with my clients. I am not comfortable being the know-it-all guru sitting in my high-rise office allowing everybody to come to me for knowledge. And there are some therapists who make that work for them, and I think that's fabulous, and that's okay, because there are people who need people like that. We need to go to the gurus and open ourselves up and allow ourselves to be taught or challenged. But that's not been my approach. Mine has always been to be transparent, to be open, and let people know that even therapists have their own struggles. I had a couple clients who responded very well to this when I first started out, and I wasn't sure about it because we were trained very much in the blank slate where we don't interject ourselves personally. But I had a client who looked and said, look, I know you don't have any problems in your life, but this is pretty serious in mine. And she was a wonderful client, and I had to really just kind of open up and allow her to see that I am in fact human. I do have days that I come home and I really, really want to yell at my child, or sometimes that I do. It's not all perfect. He doesn't just snap to things because he is this really cool human being, that even though he's a therapist kid, he still has his own mind. He has his own thoughts, and we have our own interactions, and we have to figure out how to work all of these things. So, and in fact, he was one of the stressors this week. Not he himself, but he had some health concerns come up, and it has caused a great deal of worry. And yes, we do worry. And I had to check in with that and allow that to be part of me this week. I have to own it because as a parent, what's going on with our kids affects us directly. and vice versa. When we have stuff going on, it affects our kids too. And that's why I entitled this episode, Check Yourself, with all apologies to Ice Cube from back in the 90s, if I remember right. I think 93-ish. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm not even going to edit that, so hopefully I'm somewhere close to correct. So, but that idea of checking ourselves before we go into a situation. I am, those of you joining me by video probably can't tell this, and definitely can't tell it by audio, but I am all of a whopping 5'4". I don't wander into fights too often. That even as big as I may be, I'm still the little guy sometimes, and I don't like to wander into places where I think I might be outmatched or I might be in trouble. That's just a natural safety instinct. And we need to apply that to our own families. We need to be able to look at ourselves and say, what's going on here right now? Where could I be in danger for all of this? So in full transparency, this is where things get real. When we are stressed. I had a youth ministry professor way back in the days who encouraged us to take a HALT break. And that's one of those I carry around with me a lot. If we are hurting, angry, lonely, or tired, HALT, we need to be very careful about where we are and what we're doing, because those are the times that we are most likely to make some sort of mistake, where we can wreck a relationship, where we can wreck a job that's going on, or even worse, mess up some things with our family. So we want to take a look. Are we hurting right now? Is there something going on? It could be physical pain, and physical pain does affect us. For those of us who struggle with chronic health issues, for fibromyalgia, for EDS, for any of those physical pain or just back pain, arthritis, those things lower our tolerance and help cause issues when we're talking to people. We're not quite as resilient as we should be. And we might be just a little bit edgier than we would want to be in a case like that. If we are angry at something, if we are angry at the way we're being treated or somebody else is being treated, or the fact that somebody cut us off in traffic on the way home, all those things boil the anger up. And anger is a weird emotion because it's a secondary emotion. It's always born out of something else, a feeling of helplessness. It can be born out of a feeling of jealousy. It can come out of being hurt. Men especially, we tend to do this. A lot of our emotions all default into anger. So we have to take some time and read, what is this anger actually saying to us? What's it pointing out? Where's my issue? But it does make us considerably less resilient to work with other people. And as a matter of fact, sometimes that frustration boils over and somebody will say, well, what's wrong with you? Why are you so upset with me? And it might be a valid reason to be upset, but it's inflated. So hurting, angry, lonely. Feelings of loneliness will cause us to make some bad decisions sometimes because we just want anything around us or anyone around us. And sometimes it can cause those issues. And of course, fatigue, tiredness. If we are tired, our ability to buffer ourselves goes way, way down. Sleep is probably one of the biggest cross issues that I deal with all of my clients, whether they're dealing with anxiety, depression, mood disorders, if they're dealing with family issues. I will I'm going to say always. I always ask about sleep patterns. What's going on with your sleep? Are you getting enough rest? And that doesn't mean always closing your eyes for the prescribed amount of time, because sometimes our rest isn't restful. If we are not waking up feeling like we are rejuvenated and ready to go, or can't get there within a few minutes, we have to be careful. What's going on? Why are we tired? Are we not hitting deep sleep? Are we in pain while we're sleeping? Is anxiety taking over in the midst of all of this? So hurting, angry, lonely, or tired, it's a time to check in with yourself. What is going on there? And what you're going to find is that many times these issues will come up in a couple different ways. The first way is it's pretty obvious. If we're having these kind of concerns and problems, we're going to come into our family guns blazing, hopefully figuratively. We're going to yell at the kids. We're going to yell at the spouse. We're going to push things. We're going to put things away extra hard sometimes. We may get mad at our parents and be very short-tempered. So if that's the case, if you're finding that those things are happening, that's a good red flag to take a halt break and check in with yourself to figure out what's going on. That's not to say there aren't real frustrations, okay? And again, I'm not the perfect parent all the time, whatever that may be. We have issues. Sometimes we can't get out of the house on time because we can't find shoes. Things are messed up. We forgot whatever medicine we need for the day. Those things all play in. But is our anger, is our frustration higher than that set of circumstances, or is it not helpful to those circumstances? The second way we cope with these issues, and what we're really talking about here is just the way we cope with stress, right? So the second way that we do, the second harmful way, is to retreat into some unhealthy habits. And that can be anything. Normally we think, when we think about unhealthy coping skills, I think some of the first things that come to mind is using alcohol or drugs in a inflated capacity, right, to deal with the pain, to deal with the frustration or the anger or the loneliness. Those are pretty significant problems sometimes using that. So, are those the issue? I know some people will use pornography to cope with that. They retreat into whatever fantasy land. Video games can be that way. And I'm not saying don't play video games. But if we're using those to retreat from what's going on without checking in with ourselves and understanding this is why we do it, it can be a problem. Okay, a great example, I got through college playing, depending on the year, GoldenEye and then Perfect Dark. That will tell you my age just a little bit. But they're great first-person shooter games, and they were our Fortnite of the day, kids, for those of you who are of the younger age listening to this. But it was a chance just to go in, release the frustrations, and move on. And that's okay because that's a coping skill to bring that down, but then to also re-enter reality. If you get lost in those things, that's where it can start to become more of a problem. And I don't know that there's a time limit or an hour limit or an involvement limit because those things are very subjective. I'm just saying we all have to look at ourselves and kind of get a good sense of what's going on. Some of the minor ways that we might not think about to check yourself, check your sleep and your eating. Because sometimes this is where our stress really shows up. And it can be in both extremes. Some people, when they get stressed, they completely turtle it and they crawl into bed and they don't want to get out. They don't want to move. They don't want to do anything. They just literally want to lie in bed for as much as they can. They're removing themselves from that situation. Or vice versa. Some people I know, when they get stressed, I'm one of these, we'll just go ahead and call an all-nighter. We'll be up all night. We'll be working on things. We'll find stuff to do. Sometimes it's productive. Sometimes we kind of run into the whole, this isn't productive time, and I'm just laying awake surfing whatever social media platform I choose to use. And that can sometimes become problematic. Our eating is the same way. Some of us are stress eaters. Once the stress hits, by golly, if it is not nailed down, it is going in the mouth. If it's not in the house, we're running out to get something. We are stopping on the way to and from appointments. Any way to feel better by finding food. And we have comfort foods. We have ones that we like. I think ice cream, I've talked to many, many clients who ice cream is their big comfort food. And I'm not saying it's bad again, okay? If you eat a whole carton of ice cream, I'm going to go with that that's not the healthiest option for the day. We want to maintain some of our balance. But a little bowl of ice cream, unless you have lactose issues, then we have much bigger problems than stress. But just a small bowl of ice cream. And what I encourage clients to do is to practice some mindfulness with that, to eat it and eat it mindfully. Make sure you take time to taste it, understand how it feels, understand what's going on, because that turns it into a coping skill. And eat a smaller quantity of it, not the whole carton. And yet other people, when they stress, their eating goes the other way, where they don't want to eat anything. Nervous stomachs are big for this, because anything we put in our stomach makes us feel kind of ishy, and we don't want it to cause problems there. So check yourself. What do you need? Maybe you need to break down and have some of the more bland foods during times of stress, but at least to eat to get the nourishment in there. Find something that works for you. I'm a big fan of the bananas, rice, applesauce toast where we can. All right. So again, the stress result, one of two things, either full bore into it or completely pulled away from it. And if we're having those issues, we need to check, because none of those are healthy for our family. It's one thing if you're just dealing with it on your own, but anytime you're with a family, you've got to think, how are my actions speaking to my family? That's one of the challenges that we're going to face. Okay, so obviously if we're angry and we're raging or eating everything in the house, or whatever's the big emotion of the time, that becomes very obvious how that affects, because suddenly people are scared to be around you, or they're nervous and they don't want to speak their mind and they're walking on eggshells. Why are they doing that? What's going on in you? What are you saying to them? The more challenging aspect to deal with is the retreat issue. If I'm spending all night staying up, am I hurting my kids? Well, if you're playing video games and blasting music out and you're waking them up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you probably want to be careful of that. But if it's just being up and being quiet, does that really affect them? Well, how was your mood afterwards? When you're tired, are you quicker to anger? Are you not able to deal with their stressors sometimes? And families are stressful. It's the nature of everything. So all of those things affect us. So we need to check ourselves before we wreck the family. What's going on with that? All right. So what we want to do is maybe just a self-care check-in. There's a lot of resources out there on self-care, mindfulness practices, ways of taking care of yourself, but those only work if you recognize that this is what's going on. And many times that stress will sneak up on us. We think we've managed it, we think we're okay, and all of a sudden there's a dragon there and we're a little scary or a little scared. So I'm a big fan of a holistic approach. So when I approach things, it's always mind, body, and spirit, right? So body, I think, is a real easy check-in, right? Take some time and monitor yourself. What is going on with my body? Where am I feeling stress? For me personally, I know that I'm stressed because my jaws will clench. If my jaw is feeling tired, I will usually sit back and ask, okay, what am I stressed about? What's going on here? That's a real easy one. Some people will carry it in their chest a little bit. They'll feel that tightness in there, or they'll feel knots in their stomachs. Some people I know, I've talked to them, they're hand clenchers, and they've realized that their fists have been clenched for the last 20 minutes while they've been talking about this problem. They're carrying stress with them. And so check your body. And a real easy way to do that is just with what we call a body scan. Again, plenty of resources online. This is not magic knowledge. You can pull up a YouTube video and they'll walk you through this. I'll see if I can find one, maybe link it down in the show notes. But really what you're doing, and I love the imagery of like in Finding Nemo when they have the scanner that kind of goes across the tank and they all freak out because the big laser has gone across. But you can almost do that same visualization with yourself. starting at the head or starting at the feet, wherever you're comfortable. And just with your eyes closed, if you're okay with it, and it doesn't have to be, that's not the magic point. The point is just to focus in on you. Do a scan and check in with all of your muscle groups and see where the stress is lying. See where your body is holding that. You don't have to change it. That we're not trying to fix everything all at once. All we're trying to do is just a real quick check-in with ourselves and to know, am I okay right now? Or am I feeling stressed? Are the emergency lights on? So being able to do that is the first step. Okay. Check in with your mind. Are you having issues remembering words? I know a lot of people, when they get stressed, the ability to remember words and nouns goes away, or remembering names goes away. And that's because your mind is going back into that flight or fight mode. It's going much more primal. We don't have to worry about what that big yellow animal is called that's chasing us with the teeth and the mane and all that stuff. We just have to know to get away from it. So a good sign that we're stressed is when those things start to go offline. Are the nouns going away? Are the names going away? Are we confused about things? Are we having difficulty concentrating? A lot of people, when they get to that point, they worry about dementia or Alzheimer's, and those are serious concerns, and we want to check in on those. But many times it's just stress, and stress affects our brains. It affects the way that we think. And then the third way I think we need to check in with ourselves is to check in with our spirit. What's going on? Are we spiritually connected in the way that we used to be? And I can't answer that for everybody. I come from a Christian background. It's a more evangelical one, but at the same time, I don't know how to describe my viewpoint. Very spiritual viewpoint. And for me, it's, do I feel that connection with God that I used to feel? Do I feel that He's close? And I don't want to always base our opinion of the relationship on feelings, but it tells me where I am on things. What's going on? Am I still paying attention as much as I used to, or am I distracted by things? Right? Your spiritual experience may be different. You may be more of a Bible reader, and you've measured your time and closeness by how many chapters you've been reading or how in-depth you've been reading. See if that's changed any for you. Some of us, our spirituality is being able to do yoga and feeling that sense of peace with ourselves and with our environment. Do we still feel that same sense of peace? Or does my environment all of a sudden feel like it's half cactus and it's prickling me and I don't know what to do about it? You see? This is where the self-check-in is important. And I can't answer this for everybody. I don't know your baseline. I don't know where things are for you. Only you know that. So you have to figure that out for you. Right? Now, once you've done that, now's the time to apply some self-care to those areas. Right? If I know that my body is out of whack because I can feel that stress, well, now I can look, okay, how's my eating? How's my sleeping? Do I need to do a little bit more or a little bit less of that? Do I need to find some more intimate time with my partner? Because a lot of times that will cause us to stress. We'll move away from that person when really some of the best stress releasers are being able to do those sort of things. For our mind, right? Visualizations work really well to activate our mind into the present. For me personally, when we started this podcast, I talked about getting some rough health news. And it was on Thursday last week. We took our son to the doctor and figured out that there's a possibility of a genetic condition that may cause us some problems. You'll notice there's a lot of mays and ifs and mights in there. But those of you who've been there understand that as a parent, all of those suddenly become possibilities. And as an anxious parent, they become very real possibilities. The following Friday, we had a meeting for my part-time job. We had a little retreat, and it was on gratitude. And that was not an easy one to do. And in fact, one of the things we had to do was write a letter to somebody that we were grateful, to whom we were grateful. And I picked my son because he was very much on my mind. and I wrote him a letter, and that letter is currently tucked away someplace safe. But it got me into a mindset of positivity because I could dwell with him. I could sit with him in that moment, not as worried about what's going to happen, but simply to reflect on everything that he is to me, how important he is, how blessed we were to have him come into our lives so unexpectedly. And all of a sudden it turned into a much more positive experience. And so maybe if your mind is a little bit of a mess right now, maybe the good thing to do would be to go back and share some of that gratitude. And then last of all, spirit. What's going on with your spirit? Where are you feeling disconnected? And apply that connection back to it, or try a different connection. Maybe if you're the kind of person who spends a lot of time reading, maybe this is a time to get away from that and simply just to pray. I know for me, one of the times that I have felt closest to God was when I was in Bible college, and I would cut through the chapel on the way to class, and in that time of the morning, there were usually very few people there. And one of the things I would do is just to kind of crawl onto the altar and lay there for whatever time I had, and just talk to God and just say, you know what? I don't really need anything today. I'm just here. And it's not that the chapel was a magical space or anything like that, but I was away from anything that would distract me. And I didn't need anything. And it was just a chance to focus in on that spiritual nature. And whatever your spiritual nature is, it still needs nurtured. So try to see, where is this not being nurtured and how can I apply that to it? All right. So I know this is probably not as well structured as I wanted it to be, but it's kind of where I am right now. So if you need it, take a HALT break. If you're hurting, angry, lonely, or tired, check in with yourself. Check in with your body, with your mind, and with your spirit. Be very intentional about that and see where the problems are lying, and then gently try to fix those. And if you can do that, you are going to do your family tons of good. I know you say you might not have time to do it because everything's busy, or you might not have the space to do it because everything's busy. Well, talk to those people in your close circles and explain to them that this is important for everybody, and you need that time. Don't use this as an excuse to go golfing, but you need that time. So it's all about self-care, and when you care for yourself, you're caring for your family. So your challenge this week is to do just that. Scan yourself, scan where things are going on in your relationship, and try to help with those. So scan yourself, see how things are going, give yourself some self-care and some self-love, and I would love to hear from you. If you found something that worked real well, drop it in the comments on this, or email me at matthew@breadoverstones.com. If you want me to share it on the air, I would be happy to. If you don't want me to, that's fine too. I would just love to know that this is affecting you in a positive way, and that it was worth all of my eye frustrations to go ahead and get this thing launched. So thank you very much for taking the time to let me into your lives today. I appreciate you. You are loved. You are wonderful. And I look forward to hearing from you in the future. Have a great week. Special thanks to Kevin McLeod from Incompetech.com for the music at the opening and closing of this show. The opening song was Carefree. The closing one was Cattails. They're both licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license.
This show, its host, and its guests are here to provide accurate and helpful educational information. This is not a substitute for personal counseling, and it shouldn't be taken as legal, accounting, medical, or other professional advice.
If you need a professional, you should find one in your area.
Hi, welcome to the Bread Over Stones podcast. I'd like to thank you for coming in and letting me into your... I don't know what I'm going to say. Yeah.